Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves.
In what way?
A knowledge of self. If we could be cured of our slave mentality that was indoctrinated into us during slavery, we would realize that just as the white man can do these things for himself and his kind, we can get together in unity and harmony and do the same thing for ourselves and our kind.
Welcome to another episode of the Blueprint for Black Power podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brother Dre. With me, I have my brother Tazamak Zarai and my other brother Rashad Sekou. How you guys doing today?
Doing good,
my brother.
All right, today is episode 6 of the Blueprint for Black Power podcast. Today we're going to be going over competent and legitimate forms of power. Last week, we covered influence as power, which was a very, very good section in which we talked about the different ways that the European gets people to submit to their will without them being aware of it, using influence as opposed to other forms of power, such as force or coercion or things like that. But today, we're going to talk about two forms of power that are used very strategically against the Black man in America and really against people worldwide. And that is competent power and legitimate power. And this, fair warning, this section, this podcast today might run a little over because there is a lot of meat that we want to touch on. So hopefully we'll be able to cover all of that for you guys today. But again, we wanted to begin with I know he starts off with competent power and talking about what that is. And I just wanted to kind of open it up with reading the first paragraph of this section where it says, competent authority involves the achievement and exercise of social power derived from knowledge and skill, and where behavioral compliance is obtained from the subject in return for his receipt of some benefit or service awarded by the authority. So basically what's that saying is, with competent authority or power through the use of competent authority, is the person has a specific skill set, or they have a certain amount of knowledge that you don't have, and by default that person kind of has some sort of a power over you. You know what I mean? Think of just the teacher-student relationship, where I understand you as the teacher, you have knowledge that I don't have, and therefore I have to go to you for that knowledge. I have to ask you questions, and I'm expecting that what you tell me is accurate and truthful. That's just there's all types of forms where we can see that competent authority on display. Obviously, we see it with the matter of fact, I think you were going to talk on this, Rashad, when you talked about, you said something about doctors.
Yeah, real quick, brother. I just wanted to say that, when we talk about knowledge and skill, a doctor does have knowledge and skill. But what happens is we automatically don't question anything that doctor may say. And again, I'm talking about specific to us. Okay?
Right.
Like, you have to know, okay, this is what's going on with me, but can I not go and get a second opinion from somebody else? And that's the thing. We just take it as the gospel of, okay, this doctor says this, okay, well, this must be the case. That's not always the case. Okay.
Right.
And I use that because, again, I'm not going to go too far off the topic, but when we talk about skill and knowledge, a lot of doctors don't talk about what we put in our bodies. So a lot of times they want to just give us a drug or pill or prescription of some sort that is all really messing up our body even more, instead of giving us some knowledge of, okay, can you tell me how to eat better instead of putting all these pills into me? But again, they have that knowledge and skill, and you say, write me a prescription, doc, because I just want the pain to go away. I want to be able to do something. And they do that. And again, we don't question anything past that. He's a doctor. She's a doctor.
Right. Right.
The competent stuff is just, we got to question that.
Exactly. And really, when you think about that, the danger of that is, and you'll have a lot of older doctors, I feel, that can attest to this, and some do admit to it, that a lot of these younger doctors are just being trained to write prescriptions. They're not being trained to think critically. You know what I mean? Like, again, like what you're saying, you have to think critically when you talk about diet and health and exercise and a person's body type and what might be right for them and things like that. That's a whole different level of thinking, as opposed to just being able to write a prescription. But these pharmaceutical companies are funding the medical schools, which in turn are training the doctors to be drug dealers.
Yes.
Just
Right.
write prescriptions all day long and keep people. You're not really trying to come up with a cure. You're just trying to treat diseases because you understand that that's where the money's at. You know what I mean? You're not going, the money is in treating the disease. It's not in curing a disease. So you don't want doctors that know how to cure ailments and diseases. You want doctors that know how to issue out pills and keep you on that supply, keep you on the habitually addicted to all these drugs. You see people in the medicine cabinets, they got, 10, 15 pills they have to take just before they start their day, you know, and you got pills that have side effects. So you got to take, pills to offset the other pills and things like that. But like you're saying, it really isn't, you know, it really isn't, they're issuing, like I said, they're issuing out prescriptions, but they're not really coming up with solutions and things like that. But the danger in that is, again, the person is a doctor and they have that title, and so you just automatically assume that everything that they're telling you is correct, and you take them on merit as opposed to saying, let me go and do my own research and, like you said, kind of verify it or contrast it with different opinions to see if in fact this is the best choice for me. And we see that in all different types of fields, whether we're talking about doctors, teachers, anyone that has a position, a scientist, you know what I mean? Anybody that seems to have these positions of authority, of knowledge and skill, we automatically assume that what they're telling us is correct. So,
And also, no, go on, Rashad, go.
No, I just want to say this last point, and Brother Amos Wilson tells us that because he says just because a doctor says it works in this situation, does it work for us? You see, because we're different. People don't want to accept the fact that we are different. Okay, this melanin means something.
right.
I'm not going to go too deep into that, but that's why we're reading this book. That's why we're sharing this book, because again, this is for us. So again, you want to listen to a doctor, even if you're going to listen to a doctor, has he studied you?
Right.
Or is this doctor just writing a prescription that's generic? That might not even be for your genetic makeup, but we don't ask those questions because again, we see the European power structure this is what the gospel is. So if he says, she says that, then that's the prescription I'm going to take. Is that making me worse? Is that making me better? We don't even question that, you see. And that's what we fall into the thing. We're different. We don't want to be different. That's the thing though. We don't want to be different. You don't want to be seen as a black man. You want to be seen as a man.
Right.
And that's where we get all the stuff. No, we need a doctor for us, you see.
You have genetic and biological differences.
That's all, man. And that's a fact. That's not a debate.
It is what it is. Right.
But it's also how we go on and accept competent authority. Like Brother Amos is saying here, competent authority or expertise may crucially be used as a mask for social privileges and power exercised by one group over another. And when I look at that, it's all about how we look at authority, how we question authority, the way we accept authority, because we accept this cop's authority as soon as we see his badge. A doctor, they just put on their white coat, and have a stethoscope around their neck, and we just expect you to have all this knowledge. You know what I mean? And we're very quick to accept whatever you put out there. Without having any question behind it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, the cop said this, and well, the doctor said that. We just go on, but at the same time, you know what I mean? This can be crucial to us, you know what I mean? Because this is this can be used as a mask, and hiding certain things. You know what I mean? Of course, if you see a cop in a uniform, you think that he's there to protect and serve.
Right.
That his real intentions. these doctors, is their real intentions is to doctor or to write you a prescription.
Mm.
What's going on here? So,
No, absolutely. And again, it's dangerous because we were talking about it before, even with the term doctor. You put a person like Dr. Fauci on the television to make all these recommendations about, getting vaccinated or what have you, but no one really looks into his credentials. You know what I mean?
right,
People just take them at his word. He's doctor, he's
right.
Dr. Fauci. Dr. Phil had a successful show for a long time. He didn't even have his doctorate, you know what I mean? But he had the term. He had the title doctor before his name, and that was enough for people to say, okay, we're going to respect, your knowledge and your skill, you know.
You notice that people follow more in line, when there's a title behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It reduces our critical thinking. Again, if somebody comes up to me and says, I'm Dr. So and so, I'm automatically, okay, this person must be educated because you had to go through 6-8 years of school to get your doctorate. You know what I mean? So you must know what you're talking about. But that's no guarantee.
Right.
That is no guarantee whatsoever. And then,
Right.
as in the example of Dr. Phil, so you can just put that in front of your name. Like I can go around calling myself Dr. Raphael. And if, people will automatically take you at your word just because you have that title. It doesn't Labels can be dangerous because they make us lazy. You know what I mean? They make us lazy. Less research that you have to do, less listening that you have to do if somebody just is a scientist or or a doctor or something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We got to be careful of that. But also too, what is also used against us is and Dr. Amos speaks about it, is how they monopolize these positions. They monopolize these positions. They have a lockhold on these positions of competent authority. Their kids are the ones that go to the best schools, so they graduate with these degrees, so they get in these fields where they're the scientists, they're the CEOs, they're the finance managers. They're in all of these positions of high authority, of knowledge and skill, and that allows them to look down on us and say, well, look, it's an equal system, why aren't you here? You know what I mean? This Anybody can be here, why aren't you here? Oh, you just don't have the skill set, you just don't have the knowledge. And not only do they monopolize these systems, but they also, and I want to read here, I wanted to actually read this paragraph in a whole, where it talks about how they control who can actually get into these positions. So in the I want to say it's the fourth paragraph of this section. Amos Wilson writes, European Americans monopolize the positions of competent authority in addition to monopolizing the means of certifying and delegating such authority. So not only do I have a monopoly on the position itself, I have a monopoly on who can get into the field itself. So
Right.
you have to go through my programs to become a doctor. You have to go through my schools to become a scientist. You have to get my license to be an insurance agent. You know what I mean? You have to go through my program and abide by my rules in order for me to legitimize you as being a doctor, scientist, a professor. You know what I mean? Like you know so much about history, but they would have never allow Tazamak to teach in a history in a college course, to teach history in a college course, because you don't have the college degree that says that you can do that. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what you know. Doesn't matter how great of a teacher you are, because you have not gone through their system that allows you to be able to do that. You're not permitted to do that legally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can do that on your own, set up your own little YouTube channel or workshop, but they will not allow you in their schools to teach history without you going through their system. And there's
But
so much of that.
even more on a more layman's term,
Uh-huh.
uh, even with this setup with credit, with having a credit score,
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean? Who decides what these points really are?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
it just goes,
Absolutely.
so if someone tells you that about a credit score, it's the first time you're hearing it, you know what I mean? 600, 700, 800. What do you really know? How is this based upon? What is, how is this
Right.
worked out to be? You know what I
Right.
mean? You keep your score level up here because you okay, well, if we put it at about right here, it'll be extremely tough for them to get over this part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And again, you control the finance system. So by even having a credit system, you make a system that automatically punishes the poor for being poor.
Absolutely.
If you're poor and you're struggling to pay bills, you're gonna fuck up your credit. They know that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And then you're gonna constantly be in that, excuse the language, but you know what I mean? It is what it is. You're gonna constantly be in that position of where you're inferior. You know what I mean? And you're stuck in this hole where you can't get out of it. And they've even strategically set it up, even though I think they've been trying to get away from this because people started to fight against it. But certain jobs won't hire you based on your credit score.
Yes.
Absolutely. No,
You know
that's
what I
still
mean?
in full effect, brother. That's in full
Right.
effect.
So that is just
Everything,
another form of segregation.
yes,
You know?
yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Everything, it's just crazy because everything is, and the reason why I brought that up is because everything is based on your credit.
Right.
Everything you do,
Right.
regardless of, I don't understand how, certain jobs are able to check their credit report. I mean, if my
Yep.
credit's jacked up, I would think that I'm trying to get this job to fix it.
Right.
You know what
But
I
you know how they
mean?
justify that? They justify
Yeah.
that says something about your character as being a responsible person.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Well, should
And
my response? I'm being responsible to come look for this job. Just me filling out the application is a response is being responsible.
you're
I mean,
not good at
how
managing
other
your
way am I going to fix
finances.
this credit? So, I mean, I'm just, I get what you're saying,
Yeah, no,
but
no, 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 no.
you know, all jokes aside, it's just, everything totally is based on your credit. The schools you could get into,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That's right.
The places where you can live, and you might
Absolutely.
even have the means to live in a particular place, but because of your credit,
Can't
just
get in there.
because of your credit, it means that this right here is totally out. Your cash is obsolete.
Exactly. And that again is by design. You want to create a
Yes,
system like what you say, your cash is obsolete and everything, your wealth is essentially your credit, how much you can borrow. Not how
yeah,
much you possess, but how much can you borrow. And
right,
again, you can use that system to keep people out. I will only ever allow you to borrow so much because
right.
you're in a position where you don't have enough wealth to manage your finances and all these bills that I'm throwing on you because we only pay you a pittance. You're getting paid minimum wage and you've got rent that's sky high and all these other things you can't keep up with. You know what I'm saying? So again, the system is designed to keep you down and work against you. So,
It's like
but
you
that's
said, the poor, the poor is being punished for being poor.
yeah, that's it. That's how the system is designed.
Yes,
And we willingly accept it though.
yes,
Because that we say, okay, you have the skill, you know about finances, you know about a monetary system, you know about economics. People don't know these things. And also too, why it's so imperative and so important that the black youth need to start focusing more on sciences. They need to start focusing more on mathematics. They need to start
mm,
focusing more on economics. They need to start focusing more on philosophy and things like that. These are fields that black students, hands down seem to shy away from. We don't have enough black mathematicians. We don't have enough black scientists. We don't have enough black people that know enough about economics, enough to kind of not to,
well,
to join into the white man system, but you know what I'm saying, to think independently and say, hey, look, let's take this knowledge, this skill set, and develop our own thing. You know what I mean?
well, I
Yeah.
think a lot of that plays off of because there was a time before, we used to ask our children, what do you want to grow up to be? And be a policeman, a fireman, a
Uh-huh.
teacher, something of that nature. But over the years, the last 30 years, we've only taught them one thing: to get the job that has paying the most money. You know
That's
what I
so
mean?
true.
Your kid could have
That's so
talked
true.
about being a scientist. I remember you used to have your little science kit and be doing all kind of things like that. You know what I mean? But and a kid could have those kind of interests, but because me being their parents and be like, yo, be wasting your time with that. You should be concentrating on focusing on how you're gonna get that real money.
Right.
You know what I mean? You should be thinking about being a lawyer or something of that nature.
Right.
That's a doctor or a lawyer. I mean, most Haitians or Asian people, uh, I was watching this documentary, and this Asian woman was speaking. She was like, most Asians or even Haitians or a lot of these people from over in the Middle East, they actually instruct their children what to become.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And Asian
Yes.
parents, you know what I mean, they won't accept nothing other than becoming a doctor or such.
Yeah. Indians like that too. Indians
Yeah.
the same way. Indians same thing. It's a joke amongst Indians where it's like if you're an Indian, you're either going to be a doctor or you're going to be an engineer. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? That's it. Those are your choices. You're a
All
doctor
true.
or engineer. Which one are you
Yes.
picking? That's all you
Yes.
get. You know, and it's
Yes.
the same thing with a lot of why so many Haitian women nurses? Because
Yes.
you're going to
Exactly.
be a nurse. You
Exactly.
know, you are going to be a
Exactly.
nurse. You know, and if
Exactly.
you're a male, you're going to be a doctor or engineer.
You know what I mean? And that's what you base yourself on becoming higher in that institute, where you
Mhm.
start off as a CNA, work your way up to being something like an RN. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because it's based on more pay.
Right. That is so true. It's all
And
about chasing the dollar, but we're not focusing on building communities.
you have a mind that is able to you might have a brain that's able to you know what I'm saying, cure cancer or
Right.
whatever it may be, but it hasn't, you're not going to go to that not going to go to that extent because you're already on the path of something else, and 15, 20 years went by, you know, before you could even think of doing something else.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, what makes that so difficult, the messed up part about it is the European is controlling this whole setup. You know what I mean?
Mm,
He's controlling what you should, as we talk about often, what you should aspire to, but he's also setting the limits on what you can and cannot accomplish.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's crazy. It really is
Because
crazy.
and now that you said that, let me go back to the top paragraph on page 17. At the very end of that first paragraph, it says, even if
Mm,
it is aware, excuse me, even if it is aware, it remains relatively powerless to the degree to which it lacks or does not exercise expert knowledge. Meaning you can be you see, you can see, like us, we see these things happen.
uh-huh.
You know what I mean? We see these things happen, and we are aware of these things that are happening. We're aware of the powers that be in these certain. But this basically right here saying, you know, once again, a black man's been shot and killed, and once again, we're out there with our signs and everything, and we're
Right,
like,
right.
you know, please stop killing black people. Please stop killing black people. You know, we're aware of these things, but it's powerless to the point, you know, you guys, you just do simple things. You get out there, we're going to look into this investigation, just
Right.
go home, relax, let us authorities handle this. We have the expertise, we know what we're doing. We accept it. We
Hmm.
accept it. And then you come back and you tell us it was an accident.
So true. That is so true. It is crazy because I had that same thing
And we
highlighted.
accept it.
You know?
And we
Yeah,
accept it.
we
And
do.
we
We do. Exactly.
accept it.
Exactly. And again, that goes back to us too not having that knowledge. You know, and like you brought out the point about the police, but it also flows again into these fields that are very very important to developing any sort of community, any sort of a nation for yourself. You have to understand finance. You have to understand politics. You have to understand sociology and psychology. You have to understand philosophy, spirituality, mathematics. You know, these are things that you have to understand in order to develop a community. And what we need to be doing as a community is making sure that our children are focused on these fields, but like you're saying, Kenyatta, not so that you can get a job and go work for the white man in his companies, but you need to be focusing on these sciences so that you can develop your own nation. You know what I mean? Because right now we're in a position where your nation is an endangered species, more or less. And the only way to neutralize that is, as Amos brings out, is we have to have this knowledge collectively. We have to understand how important it is for us to know these things. And we, instead of, like we talk about all the time, instead of depending on the white man to teach our children these things, which they're not going to do. They will let your child focus on being an athlete and being an entertainer. Yeah, you go in those fields, those are great for you, but we don't want you in the science fields. We don't want you in the mathematics fields. We don't really want you in the engineering fields unless you're an employee. We don't want you being an inventor and trying to do your own thing, trying to create your own thing separate and apart from what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Again, this also too goes into the importance of getting off of the I don't want to digress too much into that, but getting off of the white man's financial system altogether, and why it's so important that we have our own monetary system, so that way people are encouraged to teach themselves and reward themselves with their own monetary system as opposed to rewarding themselves with the European's dollar. Does that make sense?
It
Yes.
makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. But if we don't learn to trust one another, it makes it totally obsolete, because once again, like Dr. Amos is saying right here, they make use of these monopolies not only to command they make use of these monopolies not only to command the obedience of subordinate African Americans, but to justify the legitimacy of their preponderant power over them.
Right.
And by us not trusting one another, in a lot of cases, we're so obedient that we don't trust, because we don't trust. We'd rather believe in like a white doctor over a black doctor.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't, because you're so tied up into who the power structure is, that you're just like, you accept what they say. You know
Right.
what I mean? Your second opinion. I mean to say second opinion.
Hey, your first and second opinion, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But you're more doubtful on that black doctor compared to the way you feel towards that white doctor. I mean, it's like you give that white doctor all confidence. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And that kind of goes back into what we were talking about before, because we grow up in a society where we see predominantly white people in these positions of authority and power and skill and knowledge. So
Mm.
we've been conditioned to think that they command these positions. They're just brighter than us. They're just smarter than us. You know what I mean? That even without us necessarily saying that, sometimes just by what you're saying, Kenyatta, just by you questioning a doctor simply because he's black. You know what I mean? And but yet if it's a white doctor, you automatically take it on merit. Like, okay, this guy must know what he's talking about. But that comes from that
Absolutely.
conditioning. All your life, you've seen white people in positions of authority. So you've gotten to a point where psychologically you don't even question that authority. You just automatically assume that because you're the scientist that I've always seen, because you're the doctors and people in high positions that I've always seen, you must know what you're doing. And I clearly don't know what I'm doing because I'm not in that position. So therefore, I must
Absolutely.
listen to you. And that, because again, they control who can get in the position, they can always control that outlook.
Well,
But even think about, I'm sorry, Rashad, but let me just say, but just even think about it. The black doctor went to the better school than the white doctor, but still, you know what I mean? You're
Mhm.
still, but no patient really knows that, but still, you know what I mean? You're willing to take, you know what I mean, the opinion over it because of that white structure, that whole thing. You just believe that they must know what they're doing.
It's a
Because
training,
that's
it's a
what you've been
conditioning.
taught to believe. Now you can, I'm sorry, brother.
no, you're good. You guys, y'all are both making good points. I just wanted to touch on a few things because the points that you're making is what makes sense to a lot of the stuff that we're going through. Right here on page 18, Brother Amos Wilson says, we must keep in mind that legitimate authority and the power relations it entails are based on the acceptance by those who submit to it of certain beliefs, values, rules, and modes of giving consent. Now, what he's saying again is we're accepting this. Now, again, we'll say, okay, we're accepting this, but why are we accepting this? If you jump over to page 19, it will tell you exactly why. If you go down almost to the very bottom before that new paragraph starts on page 19,
Mhm.
the illegitimacy of the white American power is founded on the illegitimacy of its original sins, genocide, theft of property, and enslavement. See,
Mm.
so we understand why we don't have the trust in each other. We understand why the white dude's ice is colder than the black dude's ice. We understand all that because it's right here. You see,
Right.
this when we talk about 300, 400 years, because of this, the genocide, theft of property, enslavement is a mental thing. So it goes right back to these certain beliefs, values, and all those things that we have in our head. Because again, like you all say, we see this guy up there on the TV screen. That's all we know. You see, because they set it up that way. So guess what? We would not question. You don't need coercion or force. You can just say, hey, this is legitimate, because guess what? We've been seeing this guy for now 47 years myself. So guess what? He must be right. He has to be right. That's all I know. So it's got to be better than this guy, because he doesn't know anything, you see. So it's just a very slick system, the way they set it up.
Exactly. And even going like right before what you just read kind of ties in with what you're saying when it says submission to legitimate authority is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent rather than on coercion, and yet at the same time is felt to be mandatory or obligatory. And this is kind of going into segueing over into legitimate authority, you know, as opposed to competent authority. And the difference between competent authority is you're just listening to someone because they have more knowledge or they appear to have more of a skill than you do. So you feel subjected or superior to that knowledge set. Legitimate authority, you know what I mean, is a little different because now it's really not about what a person knows or does not know. It's about a person's position. You know what I'm saying? It's about, okay, this is the president. We just listen to him. We don't know. We don't care what he knows or doesn't know. You know what I mean? Like Joe Biden, what the hell does he know about viruses? You know, he doesn't. But because he's the president, he has legitimate authority. You listen to the president, right? I'm saying it's like military. You know what I mean? When you go into the military, you're taught to take instructions based on a person's position. Exactly, take orders. They don't want critical thinking soldiers sitting around and saying, you know, what's the best option? No, they need someone that when your commander says do this,
you say yes, sir.
That's it. That's all you say, and don't say anything else. Yes, sir, and go. You know, that's that legitimate authority where you signed up for it, right? Because you're not, you know, most people aren't drafted into the military or anything today. Or when you go to a job, you sign on to the job. You know that you're going to have managers and people over you that are telling you what to do, and you respect them based on their position. Like we've been to plenty of jobs where you're like, this new supervisor doesn't know what's going on. You know, you may have employees complaining like, man, this guy, why is he doing it this way? He don't know what's going on. But because he is in that position or she's in that position, you listen because that's what you signed on for. And you know that if you don't listen, you're in jeopardy of being punished or losing your job.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So even though you're consenting to it by will, it still feels mandatory. I don't like what you're doing, supervisor, but because you're my supervisor, I still have to listen to you because I consented to that when I signed on to the job. I don't like the instruction that the commander's given us. I think we're going to run into our death. But because I signed on to being a soldier and it's my job to obey commands, let me get my gun and let's run into this battle anyway, because that's what I agreed to do. So it's consensual, but at the same time, it feels mandatory because that's a command. You were given an instruction. If you don't do it, there will be consequences, but you signed up for that. You know what I'm saying?
So it makes it legit.
It makes it legit. It makes it legit. And it trickles down even to politics. And this is why we allow ourselves to be controlled by the politics, because when we vote, we're consenting to it. We're saying, okay, Mr. Biden, you're now my president. I'm going to listen to whatever you tell me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Yes. Okay, Mr. So-and-so, you're my politician. I voted for you. Now, whatever you say, I will abide by. You know what I mean? Even if you don't necessarily agree with it, sometimes it still feels obligatory. You know what I mean? This is not the way that I would have did it, but he's the president. He knows what's best. Let's go ahead and do it. You know what I'm saying? So that shit, that's how they kind of, you know.
And it's the uncritical thinking that you talked about,
right?
That we're not applying, because again, we can put that into a pastor.
Wow.
Many people go into the church, whatever denomination you belong to, and you will notice how many people won't even read. I'm not talking about while you're in church. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you go home, that same Bible, the Quran, you won't even read it on your own to see,
Nope.
okay, what exactly was the passage he's talking about? Let me read it by myself and get an understanding of it. You know, those are the things that we don't do. We just take him as the legitimate, competent authority, because guess what? He's the pastor, he's on stage. He must know, she must know,
Right.
because yeah, so
Right.
you don't even question. Again, you're not even going to question that, or you're not going to
Exactly.
go to the person next to you and say, you understand what he's saying? Is this supposed to? No, because you're not supposed to question that. You don't.
That's
So you
it.
don't think about it. You just
That's-
follow along, and
And
that's
He's,
a big
he's been
problem.
ordained by God.
Right.
You know what? And that's the crazy. The pastor is dangerous. Is in my opinion double dangerous, because he has both the competent authority and the legitimate authority. Based on what you just said there, Kenyatta, he has the competent authority because he went to theological school. You expect him to know the Bible, so
Yep.
you just take him at his word. This guy knows way more about the scriptures than I do. He's been preaching and teaching for all this time. So there's that competent authority, but then there's also that legitimate authority, because like you said, Kenyatta, people see them as being ordained by God. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then you sign on to that. I'm a member of the church. So I've
Absolutely.
agreed to listen to what my pastor tells me to do. If he says go this way, that's the way we go. If he says support gay marriage, well, we're supporting gay marriage now. If he says to not
Yeah.
support it, we're not supporting it. Whatever the case may be, but you're being swayed and manipulated by your pastor. So that's
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
double dangerous, double dangerous. But there was something at the end of this too, just going into legitimate power. There was a quote. He was quoting wrong on the 18th page. And at the very bottom of that quote, and I believe it was Franz Newman is the person that's actually being quoted, excuse me. It says, those who wield political power are compelled to create emotional and rational responses in those whom they rule, inducing them to accept implicitly or explicitly the commands of their rulers. So not only do you have this, again, legitimate authority is not about what a person knows. It's not about your skill. It's just about your position. I am a politician and you should listen to me. But the way that they get people to listen is what we were talking about before, creating these emotional responses in people. You don't want people thinking critically. You don't want people using their brains and kind of trying to figure things out. You want to create emotional responses so that way people just react as opposed to, you know what I mean? And again, they don't question your position of power because you're the president, you're a doctor, you're a scientist, whatever the case may be. But really going to a legit, you're an authority figure, you're a politician, you're someone that was voted into office. So they don't question you, you know.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that part that you just read, are compelled to create emotional and rational responses in those whom they rule. I
Right.
mean, yeah, that right there, you know, it's very important for the powers that be to focus on that right there, to create emotional and rational responses and over the people that they rule, for the simple fact, like, the way people respond off of their emotions, even with things with like women with abortions. You know what I mean? Because of my view of being against it, a woman's emotions, it may make her take that a totally different kind of way. You feel what I'm saying?
Well, no, definitely. That's a good point too, because with that, they make the abortion issue an emotional issue.
Right.
And by making it an emotional issue, people, especially when we're talking about Black women and the Black community in general, we don't look at the statistics of who's getting abortions and how many. And when you
Right.
look at those statistics and you see that statistically speaking, Black
Yes.
women get around almost 30% of Black women are getting abortions. That's first place. Second place is Latino women, somewhere around 17%. So that's second place. Second place isn't even close to first place. And then you got the white American woman, where she's somewhere around 7%. And then you got
Well,
I think the
let me
Asian
help
community that's
people
down by 2%. But hold
let
on,
me help
just
people understand what that percentage really is, though.
Oh, I was gonna break down. Go ahead. Go ahead. You can go into that.
Go
Go
on,
ahead.
go on. All
No,
right, I
no,
just
no,
want
no,
to
no, no,
make
no,
sure
no.
because some people don't get what that percentage is. I
Go
want
ahead.
them to understand
Go
what
into
that
it.
percentage is. Because you're saying 30%,
Right.
but I think it's a little different. I think it's around 70%, my brother, because for every 1,000 Black women, 756 of them have had an abortion.
Wow. That's
Latino
crazy.
women is going to be about 546. White
Right.
women's roughly about 143.
But you see the big drop. Either way you look at it, you see the big drop in numbers when you get
Exactly.
to the
You
what's
got to
supposed to
have
be
an
the majority.
understanding of what that 7% and that 30% means. If you know what I
Right.
mean, like, it's a huge difference in who's getting abortions.
It's a huge difference in who's getting abortions. But now, if we pair the black with the whites, which is supposed to be the minorities in this country, right? Black
Mhm.
black women and Latino women, they're considered to be the minorities in this country. But
Right,
yet, let's just use the conservative numbers of 30% and 17%. That's almost
right,
50% of your abortions are by the minority. But yet,
absolutely.
the majority, which is the white population, they're at only 7%. So, not to get into the abortion issue because I don't want to go off on a
Right, right,
tangent
right,
into
right,
that.
right.
But what the point that's being made here is you take things like that and you make them emotional issues and you tell women, hey, you have the right to do what you want to with your body, and you turn it into an emotional thing so that anybody that tries to take the statistics and say, but wait a minute, this is a concern over here. We have a lot of black women and a lot of Latino women that are getting abortions, a disproportionate amount compared to everyone else. So this is a
Absolutely.
real concern, but that's a logical, that's a rational concern. And they're like, well, we can't win that political debate. So let's focus on emotions because people don't really care about numbers and stuff like that. They're
Right.
emotional, especially women. You know what I mean? They're
Absolutely.
emotional. So that again is all part of that political ploy. You know what I mean? Of what politicians do best at getting people to kind of react as opposed to respond. And again, people are listening to politicians because I don't want to stray too much from that, is because these are the people that we vote into power and we give them that power over us by saying, this is my senator, this is my governor, this is my president. You're giving that person power over you so that they can tell you whatever they want and you comply with it. Just like we comply with so many laws that do not necessarily work in our favor, but because we are complicit with the system itself, we don't, we just say, okay, we'll wait for things to change, or we'll wait for things to get better, or we'll just
Absolutely.
keep voting and hope that one day things are going to turn around. And that's how they get you. You know, so long as you remain compliant with the system, they got you under control. You know,
Yes.
and that's, he doesn't talk about it here, but later on, we know that Amos Wilson does talk about civil disobedience and what that entails. It doesn't mean that you have to be violent. It just means that you need to oppose the system, like we talk about from time to time, boycotting the vote. Why wouldn't you boycott the vote? People don't understand that. That's where your power lies, in you being able to use the system in a way that favors you as opposed to the other way around. You know what I'm saying? But
Yes.
but anyway,
I dig it.
yeah, yeah, definitely,
I
definitely.
dig it.
But I know I didn't want to go too far off. There's so much meat in this chapter. What I am thinking, and this is a thought that's coming to me right on the podcast, that I
Mm.
think we should wrap it up here, but we're going to do a continuation of this section here because, again, there's a lot of meat going towards the end of this legitimate as power section. And for the most part, we really just covered competency as power for the great deal of this podcast. So I still want to do a part two, but separate and apart next week, where we just cover legitimate power.
Okay.
You make sense?
Sounds good.
You know,
That
so
sounds
that's because I think there's a lot, and I don't want to cram it all in. And I know we're coming up on an hour already, and we don't want to make this thing into, a 2 hour video. So we're gonna wrap it up with that. You
All
know,
right.
sound about
good.
good?
That makes
Um,
sense.
so next week again, we'll be covering more of this section. We'll be going into the legitimate as power section. Also, too, for those of you, as I always say, I do have a reading of both this entire section, which will be attached to the video, so you can go ahead and listen to that if you do not have the book. But if you don't have the book, we highly recommend that you go out and you get it. It is called The Blueprint for Black Power, written by the late Dr. Amos Wilson. Very good book. And you can get it at AfricanWorldInfosystems.com, which is the company that is still owned by the Wilson family. So go ahead and get that book. And until next time, did you brothers have something that you wanted to say?
I'm good, my man. Just, you know, I love the black people. Always know that.
All right, all right. Much love to our people. Rashad, you got something?
No, we're gonna keep it going. Keep spreading the knowledge.
That's it.
Spread
That's
knowledge,
it.
baby.
Absolutely. So until next time, we'll see you then. Peace and love.
Peace.
Peace.
Our own mind has to be changed. We have to change our mind about ourselves. In what way? A knowledge of self.